Hello and welcome to this special Independence Day live. Prime Minister Narendra Modi announced a major defense reform from the ramparts of the Red Fort during his speech at the Independence Day. He's announced the government's intention to create the post of the Chief of Defense Staff. Now, this is the single most biggest defense reform that the independent India will see. And the question that we are asking is, what difference will the Chief of Defense Staff make for the Indian Armed Forces? So please do send in your questions and I'll try and take as many questions as possible and also try and answer to the best of my ability. So please do send in your questions, and I have a question coming in from Rahul, and he's asking who will be the next Chief of Defense. Well, Rahul, that's something I'm sure that every single person in the military would also like to know who will be the next Chief of Defense Staff. Remember that do log on to www.ThePrint.in. A story on the same that has been done by me would be uploaded soon, which looks into the various aspects of the CDS and who are likely the front runners. For the fact of the matter is that right now the senior most among the three service chiefs is the Air Force Chief, that is Air Chief Marshal Dhanua. He is the senior most, but he's set to retire on September 30. So what sources in the government and in the defense and security establishment are telling me is that today's announcement by the Prime Minister is the first step that has been taken. Modalities are being worked out. The broad contours have already been finalized, but the whole process could take at least a month or two. Given the choice that we have in front of us, I would say that the Army Chief, General Bipin Rawat, is the front runner to become the first Chief of Defense Staff of the country. So yes, but remember that nothing has been finalized yet. It's only he's the front runner as of today. Well, I have a question has been asked by Sagar. Will the post of chairman COSC be nullified? Well, of course, Sagar, once the CDS is formed, he will take over the post of the chairman COSC, that is Chief of Staff Committee, will no longer be there. I have a question coming in from Shiv, and he's okay. What Shiv is basically asking is whether it would be a 4-star general or it would be a 5-star general. That is the post. So first of all, it would be, I would not say general per se. General belongs to the army. It could be an admiral in the future. It could be an air chief, air chief marshal in the future. But as far as 4-star or 5-star is concerned, remember that as I said earlier, the broad contours have finalized, but the nitty-gritties are yet to be finalized, or at least made public. So one will really have to wait and see whether it would be a 4-star CDS. A 4-star CDS would mean that he is the first among the equals, and whether he would be a 5-star, and a 5-star would mean that he would be above the 3 service chiefs who are actually 4-star officers. Have a question coming in from Kiran. When will we have integrated commands? As I said, Prime Minister Narendra Modi has taken the first step, the creation of the post of the CDS. Integrated theatre commands, if that's what you're asking, will take time. There are a lot of issues that are concerning the integrated theatre commands. Not everybody is on board the theatre commands. While the army is all for theatre commands, you have the Air Force Chief, Air Chief Marshal B.S. Dhanua, saying it in public that the theatre command doesn't make sense in India. So yes, I would say that the theatre commands, currently we don't have the concept of theatre commands. Remember that when the Balakot strike happened, and despite the fact that the Western Air Command looks after the borders with Pakistan, the Mirages came in from the Central Command. So I would say that one will really have to one will really have to wait before we talk about or see the possibility of a theater command in the country. I have a question coming in from Rajesh. Will the post be on a rotational basis between the three services? As I said, as I said before, Rajesh, that the broad contours have been finalized, the nitty-gritties are yet to be fixed. So this is something that every defense journalist in the country, along with the military personnel, would be looking at, whether this would be on a rotational basis or whether any other process is involved. But most likely the senior most CDS. The senior most could be anybody from the Air Force, the Navy, or the Army for that matter. Well, Prashant, I have a question coming in from Prashant. He's asking, will the CDS be in charge of the budgetary allocation? Prashant, as I mentioned earlier, there's a story that is going to be uploaded on ThePrint.in very soon. It's a story done by me, and what I've been told by the sources is that the CDS would be looking after budgetary allocation of the three services. But remember that we will know for sure only and only when the entire the concept of CDS is finalized and made public. I have a question coming in from Manu, and he's okay. Manu is asking again, so what would be the powers of the CDS? Okay, basically what Manu is asking is whether the CDS would be equivalent to the cabinet secretary or not. Currently, Manu, remember that the cabinet secretary is the senior most bureaucrat in the country. The army chief, the service chiefs are below the cabinet secretary in terms of protocol and rank. However, if the CDS is a five-star officer, it would mean that he would be most likely at par with the cabinet secretary. I'm not really sure whether he would be above the cabinet secretary, but I can say based on the understanding that I have of how the bureaucracy works in the country, that a CDS would most likely be at par with the cabinet secretary and not above the cabinet secretary. I have a question coming in from Shushant, and he's asking whether I have a question coming in from Shishant. He's asking what would be the role of the CDS. Well, as I said, the Chief of Defence Staff is something something that will pave the way for integration of the three services. Remember that in 2014, Prime Minister Narendra Modi had outlined his military strategy, the strategy for the Indian military. This was during the Combined Commanders Conference on board the aircraft carrier Vikramaditya, when he talked about joiners. So that is something that the government is looking at. He talked about agileness. He talked about a leaner military. So yes, you would have seen that the army is already has undertaken three studies under which they are going ahead and trying to trim down the armed forces from a 30 lakh strong army to somewhere about 11.5 to 12 lakh strong army. In the meantime, the government is also focusing on jointmanship, which means that all the three services, instead of operating on individual basis, will start operating together. That means that there would be sharing of assets that would happen. Remember, the classic example that I would give is the case of the Apache, that is the attack helicopters. Remember that the Air Force is getting the 22 Apache helicopters. However, the Army also wanted its own Apache helicopters. And finally, after much push and pull, the Army has will finally be getting 6 Apache helicopters. But the bigger question is, why should attack helicopters be equipped with two forces at the same time? Why should Army and the Air Force get Apache helicopters? The helicopters should be under one command, any service for that matter, and it should be used jointly. So yes, so that is something which the Narendra Modi government is focusing big. Do log on to the print and read the story which talks about what the CDS would actually entail and what it means for the Indian Armed Forces. Well, I have a question coming in from Aditya. Will CDS bypass Defense Secretary? No, the CDS will not bypass Defense Secretary, but remember that CDS will be the single pointsman to the government on all issues and matter concerning the three services, that is the Army, Air Force, and the Navy. However, in terms of Defense Secretary will continue to play a very critical role. Not many would know that in times of war, whenever a war whenever a war happens, it is the Defense Secretary who has to sign off on the paper declaring war. So Defense Secretary will continue to play a pivotal role in the entire defense structure. I have a question coming in from Ramya Nair. Will it make the position of the NSA redundant? No, the position of the NSA will not be redundant. Remember that the NSA looks after, not just the security along the borders. He looks after the foreign issues. He looks after internal security, and the NSA will continue to play a very dominant role. Case, for example, is the US. They have a national security advisor, they have a chief of defense staff, and they also have theater commands. So the theater commands, the commanders of those theaters don't necessarily really, talk to the service chiefs. They interact directly with the Secretary of Defense and the President directly on many issues. Well, I have a question from Kanika. On what basis was this decision taken? Any historical analysis? Well, Kanika, that's a very good question. Remember that after the Kargil war, there was a high-level committee that was set up, which was headed by, the former India's, doyen of strategic thinking, K. Subramaniam, and he had come out with this concept of the Chief of Defense Staff. This was meant to bring in jointmanship and integration of the three services. Following that committee's recommendation, there was a GOM, that is group of ministers, that looked into this issue. The group of ministers was headed by the then Deputy Prime Minister L.K. Advani, and the GOM was also in favor of the creation of the post of CDS. However, the GOM said that there needs to be a political consensus, and this was something that has been missing for long. It was in 2000. There was also a Naresh Chandra task force committee that was set up in 2011, in which they had also recommended not the post of a CDS but a post of a permanent chairman chief of staff committee, which is so the and since then the government has been looking into both these issues, whether to have a CDS or to have a permanent chairman chief of staff committee. But today Prime Minister Narendra Modi has made it absolutely clear that the Indian military would be getting a CDS, that is a chief of defense staff. Well, I have a question coming in from Aditya, and he's asking whether had the Modi government talked about this before. Well, it was in 2016 when the then Prime Minister, when the then Defense Minister Manohar Parrikar, while talking to a select group of journalists, which included me at that time, he spoke about the need for the creation of the post of CDS, and he had said that that he would be moving a proposal before the government. And now the whole issue of CDS has also come up in the Parliament in 2018. February, if I'm not mistaken, there was a Parliament question that was asked whether the government is planning to create a post of the CDS. At that time, the government, in his reply to the Parliament, had said that had spoken about the Kargil Review Committee, the GOM, as well as the Naresh Chandra Task Force, and had said that the government is looking into both these recommendations. So yes, a decision has been taken. Well, I have a question coming in from Anmol. Is asking, will DRDO and other defense PSUs come under CDS? Well, as far as the defense PSUs are concerned, no, they will not come under the CDS. The CDS is looking at would be from a strategic point of view. As far as DRDO is concerned, I will not really be able to say that. One will really have, but I don't think so it's going to come. But I would say that one will have to really wait for the broad picture to come out, for the government to make public the concept of the CDS. Well, I have a question coming in from Sandeep, and is asking how will it affect defense modernization. Well, Sandeep, the CDS, what I'm told from my sources within the government and from the defense and security establishment, is that all modernization process and acquisitions would be the charter of the CDS, which means that he would play a pivotal role in steering the modernization of the three services. So yes, he would play a very critical role in that. I've also a question coming in from, okay, this is again coming in from Sagar, and he's asking whether, okay, he's asking the similar question that has been answered before, is whether the CDS, how powerful the CDS would be. As I said earlier, that one will really have to wait and see to know whether the CDS would be a 4-star officer or would ideally be a 5-star officer. If he is a 4-star officer, he would mean that he is at par with all the 3 service chiefs. So and he would be the first among the equals, and he would not be at par with the cabinet secretary. But in case the CDS is a 5-star officer, that would mean that he would be above the 3 service chiefs. So he is not the first among the equals, he is actually the top man as far as the defense forces are concerned. But at the same time, he is also likely to be at par with the cabinet secretary in case he's a 5-star rank officer. More questions on the same, but I would say that one would really have to wait and wait for the government to come out with a blueprint, and then only would we be able to say exactly what is the role of the CDS and exactly how powerful he will be. Well, thank you for logging into the Print Lab on the Independence Day, and we at the Print wish you a happy Independence Day.